Welcome, everybody, to our second Saturday's poetry reading. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Kerr, and I have the privilege of being your moderator at this monthly poetry reading hosted by Kathy Donnelly. We do start promptly at about 11 a.m. There's a poem in my head called Good Things Coming Out of COVID, and one of them is that poets have learned to be more punctual, so we're pretty close to 11 a.m. If you would like to read, we do have an open read in the program. Please remember to put your name in chat. And anyone who puts their name in chat, we will call you to read in the open read in the order that your name appears. And Marvin, you don't have to put your name in chat because we've already put you number one, so you're first. Please keep your microphone muted. And Judy has a poem about barking dogs and ringing telephones and people knocking on the door. So out of respect for the fellow poets and the background noise, please keep your microphone muted until it's your time to read. Feedback is a gift, so if you want to provide us with feedback, there's the email there. It's real easy to remember, danielbkerr@verizon.net. Any feedback I get, I share with Kathy. We reflect on it, and we've been doing this now almost 3 years virtually, but we continue to refine the program, so don't be bashful with your comments. Also, if you're not on our list of poets that gets a copy of the recording, and you want a copy of the recording, just send me an email and I'll be happy to send you a copy of this recording. It takes a couple of hours after the reading to have it fully loaded. So our planned agenda is I will welcome you and get you settled. I'll turn it over to Kathy, who generally reads the poem, and then Kathy will introduce our featured poet. We're very excited to have Ella with us this morning. Then we'll do the open read. We'll bring Ella back for an encore, and then Kathy will give some closing remarks and introduce the poet that we have for February. This is not here, you're not here to be evangelized, but this is one of the many outreach programs of the church. And there are three things that we do that the poetry community does participate in quite a bit. One is our concert series. Bruce, it'd be good to see you again at the concert. Women in science are rare. You've heard all the emphasis put on, getting women involved in STEM studies. Women in the music world, particularly in brass instruments, there are very few women who play brass instruments. And notice the very particular spelling of the group that'll be performing this evening, egalitarian brass. You can see the particular emphasis there on gal. So they'll be performing this evening. We do those concerts once a month. We also do the poetry once a month. You'll recognize the poets there in the standing. And also we do Native American drumming every month. That's the fourth Thursday of every month. We do that in our parish house. If you'd like more information on any of those things, just reach out to me directly or go to the All Souls website. Once a year, we combine all the outreach programs. So you'll recognize the poets up on the altar. This is called Conversations of the Sacred. So what we do is we read sacred poems, and they're read by the poets. And then after each of the sacred poems, we have a musical interlude, either with Dan Kinney, the All Souls organist on the 200-year-old urban organ, or musicians from the university. So you'll see them all assembled on stage. Last year, we did that on August 5th. This year, we'll have that in July. If you have any interest, you're all welcome to attend. If you'd like to be one of the poets that read, again, just reach out to me directly, and we'll make sure to give you an opportunity to read. Also, once a year, when we used to do the poetry in the church has been there since 1896, National Register property designed by the architect Stanford White. When the church was designed in 1896, the life expectancy in the US was less than 50 years. No one gave much thought to handicapped accessibility. And we used to do the poetry in the church. We had a number of poets who couldn't make it up the stairs, so they had to stop coming. And the church has never had a bathroom. So the church says we meet people where they are. And how do you meet people where they are if you don't have a bathroom in the church? So once a year, we have an event called the Souls for All Souls. It's a 5K race, and it's a 2K walk that celebrates the role of the church and the various ways we serve the community, and also generates funds to make the church accessible, and also to put a bathroom in the back of the church. And that project, all the funds from the race have been dedicated to that project. We've raised over $100,000, and we now have a plan approved by the diocese. We now have an architect engaged, and work is going to be commencing soon on that. But we do that race. I don't have the exact date, but it will be the first Sunday in October. And you'll see there a group where you'll recognize the poets going from left to right. That's Wendy Trance and Barbara Southard and Dr. Richard there, and Barbara, who always has music in her wake. There's a group each year called the Live Poets Society. They don't run, but they walk. So you may want to consider either walking with them next year, or if you want to be the first ever group of poets to run, that would be great as well. So again, I welcome you, and I'll turn it over to Kathy. Kathy, over to you.
Okay. So first of all, Ella, welcome. And very nice to meet you, even if it's in Zoom and not in person. I just want to take 1 second out for everyone to just send love to Barbara Southard, who lost a daughter recently, 61 years old, healthy as can be, and then died of pneumonia, apparently. So she's really suffering. I don't think we'll see her for a little while, and we'll know why. I start with a poem, Richard, I just sent to you for a flash, and it's called Good Bones, and it just grabbed me when I read it. I read it with a group of people, and it's called Good Bones by Maggie Smith, not the actress. Life is short, though I keep this from my children. Life is short, and I've shortened mine in 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways, 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways. I'll keep from my children. The world is at least 50% terrible. And that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird, there is a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken, bagged, sunk in a lake. Life is short, and the world is at least half terrible. And for every kind stranger, there is one who would break you, though I keep this from my children. I am trying to sell them the world. Any decent realtor walking you through a real shithole chirps on about good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful. I'm going to introduce Ella now. And again, Ella, welcome. And we're so happy to have you. And I feel, since you're so young, I actually feel a little proud of you. That comes from being old enough to be your mother, maybe more. Let's not go there. Ella Scarlett O'Connor is Suffolk County's first teen poet laureate. Congratulations. And has used her position to bring poetry to the residents of Suffolk County through the Avalon Park Young Nature Writers Workshop, Youth Speaks for Social Justice program, and the Why We Write initiative, each uniquely focused on empowering the youth through writing. Her mission is to create a community of young poets and activists who are passionate about social justice and community development. That's a lot for a little girl. My goodness, fantastic. So thank you, Ella, and it's over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here today. And I just want to say Good Bones is actually one of my favorite poems. I keep a quote poetry wall in my room, and it's one of the ones that's featured most prominently, actually. So thank you for sharing that poem with us today. Recently, a lot of the writing I've been doing has been academic writing or for college applications. So it's actually really nice to be here this morning, spending the morning appreciating my personal favorite writing style. Um, so a lot of the poems I'm going to share this morning, because I just tried to go through and pick out some of my favorites, are kind of go along the theme of beautiful, beautiful places. A lot of nature poems to start us off with. My first one is called A Novice's Guide to Following the Path of a Memory, and it's reflecting on kind of my family's history and relationship with our local nature preserve, Avalon Park. So I'll suppose instead of, usually I like to give a longer introduction, but I'll let the poems speak for themselves today. A Novice's Guide to Following the Path of a Memory. I stand at the wooden gates, seeing each who had traced the path before me. Each step previously taken echoes within. 1. Soft warmth beating down upon this couple holding hands. She brushes hers against his cheek. His is as gnarled as the wooden oak, yet made soft and new once encased in her protection. He had forged far more difficult paths than the one she follows him through today, and would choose this path every single day. Over the crash of breaking windows, over the drum beats echoing the footfalls of soldiers marching into his hometown, over the utter silence of lying in wait, fighting for his freedom with each quiet breath. All this fight tucked into the heart of a little girl they never got to meet, who kept that strength inside her, balled up tight in her fists, released ferociously with her words. 2. Peeking through the bushes, a timid giggle, she reaches towards the question with an unbroken hand. The leaves tickle her face, the wind pushing her forward until she stumbles towards him. They play between the rocks, and in that moment she is both moss and root, both feeling the pulse of everything around her and wanting to claim every little beautiful thing as a part of herself, her heartbeat the flap of a gull wing. She is still new enough to the world to be able to see a future in the shape of the clouds in the sky, stories inscribed on the paper of her skin, a library for the beleaguered past. 3. A thorn pricked her in the foot the next step of the way, and she stumbles, left bereft. Snapped from her stem, she drops to her knees and tries to find it within the leaves of grass so she can be a part of the earth once more. But she is left empty-handed, this thorn-footed girl. Each step must be taken gingerly now. She has lost her way in this wood, each oak indistinguishable and none his hand, none swaying towards the way in which she must be a woman on this earth. Herself the only one who can map the way out. 4. She has found her footing again, feet planted firmly back in the dirt. She has found her path again, tracing the forks in the road until they are tattooed on her back. She has found her words again, each story a pebble she has placed in her pocket, clattering next to each other as she runs towards home, somehow echoing harmonious, rattling deep within her. The leaves stirred up behind her begin to settle into their new patterns. Tomorrow is a new day, and the woods will welcome her once more. Thank you. So the next two poems actually I'll share, reflect on a trip I recently took to Yellowstone Park through my work with Avalon Park, actually, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. This first one I'd like to share is called Hartman, and it's based off of one of my experiences with a photographer, Dan Hartman, who I met while I was on this trip. And we got into a little bit of a conversation about photography and interventionism and the photographer's creed, which is essentially to sit back and let events happen, events unfold as they do, as opposed to becoming involved even in difficult situations. So this is called Hartman. Picture flies hovering and the heat radiating off the ground, blurring the epic vision of a mass of muscle lumbering down the mountain, slicing a mother elk into bloody strips. When only the carcass remained, we waited for hours, the goal to deliver whatever critics could call unflinching. And when we saw the ribs cracked into the shape of angel wings, it was taken as a sign of something good about to happen. That night, we watched the footage with only a satisfied smirk and a tinge of awe, our only concern where to set up camp tomorrow. So from behind the leaves and fallen brush, we watched a family nest with hopes of carnage, 3 children and a mother doomed to a photographer's unaffected eye. Thank you. So my next one, I have them in my journal, so I'm just gonna take a minute to find it. And it's called, 2 journals. It's called, oh, I'm sorry, just give me 1 second. I thought I had it tabbed. Oh, here it is, okay. It's called Big Sky, and the poem is about my connection to the other hikers who were also taken on this trip to Avalon Park. And it kind of reflects upon some of the conversations we had about our relationship with nature and our place within nature. Big sky. Talk to me about the bison, please, for as long as you care to. The sun is hung high above us, and there's still so much space before the water. It's only your voice and the trees rubbing against each other, only the wind pushing the tall grass from time to time, so much more self assured than back home. I know everything I care to about how to make my head spin like those old carnival rides, how to calcify my bones and spark my own little explosions. But I've never known this peace. We can talk on the trails about every hidden wonder, and our noise will never pollute the sky. We can lay our bodies down in the black sand by the lake and never find a wasted second. We fill ourselves as we need to, and then our exhales will hang in the air next to the plumes of smoke from an ancient geyser, moving our attention towards the treetops. Tell me, have you ever seen the world from just below the clouds? Thank you. Um, so the next poem I'd like to share moves away from the woods and more towards the water. It's a little bit, I guess you could say, more artistic than what I'm used to writing. It's a little unconventional, but I wrote it with a friend actually, and I've been thinking about him a lot recently because he just came home to visit for the first time in a long time. So I thought, in honor of him, I'd read this pretty short poem. Lifeblood. O Atlantic, frigid mother, I come to you with only the flesh you have given me to relieve its bearing. Only now I have life's woolen mail. These women I compose poems beside in silence. There is talk of screaming, but perhaps birth is only as simple as wading out of water, and our lives can be as simple as floating in your blameless embrace. Only when we emerge from the water do I realize the light bears brilliant circles. Only then do I realize I compose to crown you. Thank you. So my next poem is a little longer, and this one is called Preserve, and it reflects upon um, my experiences teaching the workshop at Avalon Park. For those of you who aren't familiar with one of my missions as poet laureate, it was to establish a creative writing workshop for young students up at Avalon Park. And it's called the Avalon Young Natures Writers Workshop. And if any of you are familiar with Kathy, I apologize, I don't remember her last name, or Doug Elliott, who work at the park, they have been incredible in helping me organize the whole initiative. So this poem was written as a reflection on the first workshop I ever led there, which was the summer, I want to say the summer of 2022, maybe 2021, might have been 2021. But this is called Preserve. Call it a sage tree, even if its leaves are closer to emerald. It has earned the title, uncompromising as a beating drum, the center of a tapestry of bird songs woven into the delicate earth. It has mediated many a battle between the hard-headed eagles, become a repository for young fawns, and seen the indefatigable turning of the seasons. Call the water rapid, as it harbors a closed-mindedness calamitous, springing with insolence as it carves its own path, wearing on the delicate earth till it caves, creating caverns where abundance once lay, bending each reed to its will as it rushes, and it taunts the veteran tree, not comprehending how it could possibly keep so still. In the water, any rings would ripple away quickly. Each badge the tree has earned, each lesson learned, would be sunk if given to the bay, as it speeds along at the pace of rolling thunder, clashing with the ancient tree, sending shockwaves through the grass. But both furies would be dimmed by a larger shadow, a shadow that places more value in the dollar than the real, with its indelible hatchet, tearing down ancient wisdom and ensnaring the gulls with their own rough calls. So in a moment of understanding, the tree fortifies, and the young stream drowns out the grunts, and every element crowds to make a cacophonic call for dismissal. And the water understands now how it must be careful. And as they flee, a smaller set of shadows emerges from their confusion. This newer shadow stares softly, treads slowly, but thinks loudly. And one day, those ideas could begin to heal the world. They sit in a crescent around the shrewd tree, the curvature of their spines twisting into stumps, creating sculptures intended to consecrate, not contaminate. Each line that tumbles from their reverent lips, an aria of awe. The river runs alongside them as they gallivant through the grass, whooping, warbling with the musicians of the wild, harmonious. We could use more harmony in this world. Thank you. And then a very short one that I also wrote about this experience. It's just something that I wrote while sitting and watching my students write, which is such a wonderful experience. I'm sure as many of you know from running your own poetry workshops, being the person who is able to spark other people's imaginations or creative inclinations is such a wonderful feeling. So this is called, we'll see if I can find the journal it's in, Overlooking Stony Brook Harbor. Though each student is hunched over, the teacher stands bewildered. She writes to understand herself, but is left breath, unsure whether they were given too much time alone, or perhaps not enough. But either way, the birds are humming, and their low thrush begins to fill her with a little bit more of life. After all, today she is only the one meant to plant the seed. Short one, but I personally like that one a lot. So I'm going to move on a little bit towards some more relationship and I guess something I would consider activist poems. But before I do, one last nature poem I would like to share is called The Turning. And I wrote this one for one of my best friends who was going through an incredibly difficult period in her life. And when I wrote this poem, I wanted to write it as a comfort to her, as kind of a reminder that I'll always be here for her. And it also reflects upon some of the experiences we've had in nature. So this is called The Turning. I was going to write a poem about war, but instead I saw it behind your eyes. Saw it earlier when we walked in tandem, the scent of rain long born into our skin. Its fury rolling down our faces, becoming hypertonic, before dropping fatly to the ground. We kicked our feet into dew-swollen grass and let the mud-stained canvas shoes, called it purification, as the sky turned to charcoal and we turned towards home. Instead, I wrote this draft for you and remembered we made a pact that day to keep inhaling that uncertain air, because if we tried hard enough, we could find that first note of cherry blossom, that one illuminating bud harking the end of winter. No, we will soon sit under that dogwood tree, unfurling blooms giving us both stronger breath. No, one day we will be lying in softer grasses and find our sorrows have filtered into the earth. So, thank you. I see I have about 5 minutes left, and with those 5 minutes, I'm going to read a couple poems that a few people here might have had the opportunity to hear before, but since I'm introducing myself to a relatively new audience, some of my old favorites. This first one is one of the poems that I read at my ceremony when I first was given the title of Poet Laureate, and it's one I've always loved, I think probably because I spent the longest writing it. And it's called The House of Wisdom, and it takes this, or I suppose I'll read it before explaining the metaphor in its entirety, but it's essentially a reflection upon modern book banning. When wisdom is drowned. The goal was to leave no trace of what was once golden. The house stood over the meandering river, clamoring with the sounds of students sketching their futures, a Fibonacci of ideas stacked one on top of the next. They spoke in metaphysics, defining reality in terms of angles, numbers, space-time, and all the while the river watched, the color of sapphire. But for all their preparations, they never saw the arrows overhead, landing in the heart of their city, citizens bleeding out the exits, leather coverings bound into simple sandals, teaching stomped into the earth as they besieged the house, taking innovation and tossing it in the river. And there might have been no funeral, but the river still flowed as black as obsidian, assembling an elegy from deoxygenated words as they were ferried across a Stygian stream. A bridge could have been formed from those works alone. Instead, no man's journey was supported, making the river a pallbearer, and so went the House of Wisdom. Now, the goal to leave no evidence of change effective. The house stands over the hallowed academy, clamoring with the sounds of students assembling their futures, each tessera performing a picture of promise. They speak of egalitarianism, defining reality in terms of labor, capital, and skill, and outside the people come and go, faces crimson red. Only from studying the patterns could they see the fists slamming down, trying to swing at the heart of their stories, replace rhythm with repetition, promoting dust jackets as flimsy as pledges made from pursed lips, teaching stomped into the earth while they besieged the house, holding on to history books, yellowed and spineless. And there might have been no burst of flames, but the fear ignited suffocated centuries of scrawlings, and diatribes were delegated to drown out difference. For they would have liked to flood the classroom with their point of view, but there can be no more muting the messages of mouse and men. Instead, every student, inundated with indignation, making the schoolhouse an echoing chamber, working so wisdom can no longer be drowned. Thank you. So I've been timing myself here just to make sure I don't go over the time limit. It looks like I have time for about one more. So the last one I'm going to share is a poem inspired by Mary Wollstonecraft's Vindication of the Rights of Women. And it's one I recently read at a tandem reading with Deborah Hauser. And it's one I really enjoyed sharing with her because one of the biggest things we've been able to connect over is our passion for feminism. So I figured I'd end for now with this one. Just have to find it. One moment, please. Okay. And this one is called Vindication. Women are rendered weak and wretched, she says, like a tea kettle taken off the flame a moment before it begins to sing, like a sharpened nail along a running stitch. Women are lured into thinking we're indebted, she says, to the mores of a proper dame. But how can a woman stand upright if all she's taught is to lower her pitch, and no seed of physics, poetry, is ever planted? Soil desiccated, air cool, and sunbeams scant. Women are weak and wretched, they say, minds as final as the etchings on a pole-war blade, pressed against soft hair or hooded veil, each swing a tempest that sways a plotted course. Sacrilege to disobey the norms, they say, and though you dream of soaring bravely, will ensure the heights you could have reached will remain your greatest remorse. Round your aspirations to be great. Only this life of erudition awaits. Well, your arguments are weak and wretched, we say, in our envys echoed throughout time, outrage bursting forth from our lips like Mary, Malala, mothers of resistance, Athena bursting from the skull of Zeus, yelling that she will not be trapped to the confines of a man's mind, when worldwide we have felt every stab right to the gut as we elbow our way to the schoolhouse gate, pounding on the doorway, one knock for every woman who has been told she does not deserve the right to reason. Thank you.
That was great, Ellen. You took us on, it's amazing the journey you took us on in those 9 poems that you read. I mean, you took us to Avalon Park. We could feel the joy and the wonder of the little girl in the park. And standing there with that photographer at Yellowstone Park and the hopes of carnage. I assume you were waiting for some good nature survival to finish there. The Big Sky poem with the other hikers and the relationship with nature, and it was just beautiful. The lifeblood, that the description of the water and the frigid Atlantic, the leading the workshops there, just beautiful when you describe the trees and the water. You know, we do Native American poetry, and the imagery that the Native American drummer always does is he speaks of the tree and going into a tree, and Native Americans describe the trees as tree people, and you really captured that. I'd love to share that poem with our drummer. And anyone who's ever been to Stony Brook Harbor can just picture you trying to plant the seed in those young poets. And what a beautiful gift to give to a friend, you know, to help them through hard times in terms of writing a poem for them and looking forward to the time when you would lay upon softer grasses. And, you know, that beautiful poem on the House of Wisdom and thinking of the river as pallbearers for literature that has been banned, just very moving. And your passion for feminism, you know, was just so beautifully articulated in that last poem. So thank you for that. We look forward to bringing you back for an encore. Okay, so we're going to move now into the open read. You're welcome. We're going to move into the open read, and we do have, I hate to call them rules or commandments, but most of you who are regulars know this, but we do enforce these. We've never had to enforce them because people are aware of them, but here they are. So if you want to read, put your name in chat. While I've been multitasking here, I see 10 names in chat. So if you haven't put your name already in chat, you want to read, put them in there, and I will call you in the order. Please, only one poem. Please, only one poem, and please, no poem more than 5 minutes. Keep your microphone muted until you're called upon to read, and do wait to be called upon to read. And then when we're done with the open read, we'll bring Ella back for an encore, which we look forward to, and Kathy will close the program. We'll end a little bit after 12, sometime between 12 and 12:30, depends upon how long the poems are in the open read. And we're going to announce the open read in pairs of 3. So as I change screens here, the first group of 3 is Marvin, and then it is going to be, Bruce, I believe, and then it's going to be James. So Marvin, over to you. Remember to turn your mic on.
Okay, should I start?
You may start, Marvin.
Okay, it's tough to read after Ella. When I was her age, over 100 years ago, I was flipping baseball cards, not writing such great poetry. So I'm going to try my best, but I just can't keep up with her. Tremendous, Ella, very excellent. This is my January poem, since this is the month. It's called But This Was January. I saw a robin from my window, a fact not odd in itself, but this was January. Why, robin, are you here? Did you lose your way when the others flew and flew? He perched there on the tree, its branches aching from the frost. Only a dream now, the days when sap oozed from its veins, caressing its way into a black earth. Robin, perhaps you are not up to it. The trip, I mean. Some feathers and a heart are small encouragements to brave the slaps conspiring that cause affront. The robin danced on the skeleton, and spiraling up to the highest limb, began to prim, exulting all the while, a wild song. The beak met the red chest. Robin, fly away. Escape before you become like the tree. Little bird, did the others desert you? Did they force you from themselves? You're more important things to do than fuss over some feathers. That's for the lovebirds in the cage. Some geese flew over the house just yesterday. Don't know what they were doing up here this time of year. Join them, they will not mind. Fly, robin, fly beyond the fingers of the white hands. By God, it was something to see. The geese in flight, eclipsing the light from the dwindling day. It was as if someone called to them, a hunter in a lonely marsh, perhaps, at one with the welcoming chant, invigorating the drowsy southern day, the boldness of its echoing, arousing the pale northern corpse, drifting in among the flock, settling under their wings, buoying newfound souls, a transfusion. Robin, fly, the snow will bury you. Stop your fool priming. Oh, why am I wasting my breath? The robin doesn't understand. Then I saw no robin from my window. I saw the snow and the snow and the night, but somewhere from the snow and the night, there came a sound like a song, or so I thought. Thank you.
Well done, Marvin. True confession, I had a girlfriend in high school named Robin, and I remember the song Robin Fly, Robin Fly. Thank you for that. It was very well done. Okay, over to Bruce.
Okay, thanks, Dan. And thank you, Ella, for sharing your poetry. And thank you, Kathy, for putting all this together. Eddie the cat. Eddie the cat was cool, shaved head and black beret. He liked to say, "I don't get resentments, I give them." He used to drink a lot, though he finally figured out that all that drinking, not so good for his thinking. Back in 1944, Eddie the cat went to war and brought his habit with him. In the woods north of Paris, he drank himself blind. Just about the same time, a German patrol came by. The next thing he knew, he was limping from a bullet wound in his thigh, pointing his Thompson at 8 German soldiers, their hands held high. The army gave him a Purple Heart and then a shiny bronze star, though for his part, he could not recall what the hell happened, not at all. 9 months later, and drunk again, Eddie fell off a rolling troop train. The next thing he knew, a nurse says, "You're going home. War's over. Truman dropped the bomb." So he asked, "Who the hell's Truman?" Home, he was a hero, loved and admired by all. Everywhere he went, it was drinks on the house every night. The next thing he knew, he was out on the street, his clothes in a gunny sack. So he stayed at his mother's, and he stayed at his friends', and he stayed at his girlfriend's brother's. And each, they finally told him to leave and not come back. That's when he finally knew what the drinking was doing to his thinking. Yeah, Eddie used to like libation. For him, not a good idea. But he never gets resentments, he used to say. He gives them. Thank you.
Well done, Bruce. I'm reminded of that Johnny Cash song, Ira Hayes, Marine that went to war. Well, very well done. Thank you. James, over to you. James from North Carolina.
Well, let's see. Let me go up to my poem up here. I did my printer got messed up and I couldn't. Okay, here we are right here. Okay, let's see. Okay. Bounty hunter born and bred. When movie by me was seen about a bad man who would be mean, would think and much time will devote. When favorite poem was finally wrote. Terrible Tom Horn did have to die today. For all his terrible sins now must pay. Bounty hunter, born and then bred. Whoa, let me come up here. Oh, where am I at? Oh, and bred. Pretty soon was bound to be dead. Bound to be found dead. Philandering person who would be hated, while for a short time in saloon had waited. Then he had taken a short single breath, then harshly shot the poor soul to death. From fraudulent life he had been set free, would be found hanging from an old oak tree. Let me come down here. Oh, I had a rough time with this thing. Okay, let me move it right down and we'll get it. I'm having a time. Okay, can you read the rest of it for me? I can't get down there.
I can't, but keep it going. It's somewhere in chat.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Let's see. Okay, bounty hunter born and dead bred. Okay, then harshly shot the poor soul to death. Let's see. Would be found, let's see, from fraudulent life he had been set free, would be found hanging from an old oak tree. When he shot each person who would die, death and destruction were the reasons why. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you for the bounty hunter. Okay, next group of three is Dr. Richard, followed by Purple Judy, and by Claude. So Dr. Richard, over to you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. This is a very old poem, actually dates to 1998, and it relates to my work in medicine. And it was a time when ultrasound became available where it was possible to actually see pregnancies very early on. And this was the very first time I wrote this after seeing the embryonic heartbeat. Laboratory-assisted reproduction. Add eggs from cloistered places, from gonads goaded into gravid opulence, and sperm suffused with ancestral potency. And gametes join in dark synthetic climes. They are primal plans to present times. Formed from their infatuated union, transferred by my tinker's hands to your waiting womb, the embryo has its way and names your mother. I've often probed that fecund place, and in the dark vista of my sonic vision, thought the motion of a nascent heart, bearing witness to life, beating ceaselessly within us, joining all creatures, past, present, future. Thank you.
Especially if you have this energy between medicine and poetry. Special gift. Okay, Purple Judy, we got a new nickname for you. I hope it's appropriate.
It fits. It fits. Thank you, Ella. What a wonderful set. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Kathy. So I just got this beautiful new anthology, Ode to Love, from Quilled Ink Review. And so I have a few of them in here. I'm pressing the age button, I guess. I don't know. Before tomorrow. Here I am, as you will never see me again. This daytime, hour, minute, second gone already. Fleeting fast as these 21,899 days have gone. Though so many poetic moments flash before me, laughter bright as sunshine, smiles ocean wide, hugs that last as long as a string of clouds on a July day. This July day, the 5th, not quite the 6th, but it is coming. Like a storm of reality, like a rose bush pumping out blooms for 6 decades less one day. Still flourishing, though a slower pace, still fragrant to attract bees, still trying to keep on keeping on. Here I am, soon to transform to a new me, a new decade turned, a new page in my life, in my book of life, sexagenarian. Sexy, seductive, but not yet, not ready yet to let go of this semi-century. I'm holding on to my 50s with both hands, a wild ride I don't want to end, don't want this looming tomorrow cloud to shadow all days beyond, and I pray for many, 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 many at all more. 59. I'm savoring every moment left, every wrinkle a testament of my journey, every eye crease a result of laughter, every gray hair. Okay, let's not go there. Every moment a blessing, every smile a chance of charity gifted to all, especially those most in need. Here I am, clock watching for the moment, the second striking the revolution, the evolution of a world I've never seen before, but love already. Thank you.
Well done, Judy. Well done. Okay, Claude, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. I saw this tweet this morning from New Zealand, and what they said was, during the COVID mandate, they only had one person in the whole country that could process an exemption. So if you had a heart attack, or you had a stroke, or you had a very bad allergic reaction, this one person could exempt you from getting another shot, which is kind of crazy. So this is a poem about the vaccine and the propaganda that goes along with it. When we should have been treating patients, we were focusing on the vaccine. Okay, so, and the vaccine, the spike protein that's made from the vaccine goes to the ACE2 receptors that sit on the endothelial cells that line all the blood vessels in your body. Vaccine propaganda narrative. What it says is not what we see. We want to believe in pristine and perfect, no side effects, no evil spirits lurking. The narrative should be comparative to truth, but there is no room for questions. Autocratic thinking should bring autocratic reparations if the damage is done, if the lies suicides the faithful and dumb. Accepting the answer, so rife with flaws. Science suffers on the steps of politics, where horns keep blowing and sirens sounding disrupt our logic, our brains chaotic, our neurons misconnecting their synapses, perhaps the vaccine spike proteins attaching to ACE2 receptors on our endothelial cells, lining our capillaries, attacking our myelin sheaths, happening while we deign to deny such a possibility, arresting the dialogue, limiting the research to fit the tale of salvation promulgated by angry experts, tragic victims swept into oblivion as the pandemic mutates.
Thank you, Claude. Obviously, very timely topic. Well done. Okay, the next group of three is Bernardo, followed by Dan, her, and then followed by Emily. So Bernardo, over to you. Bernardo, you got to turn your mic off, or turn a mic on, rather. There you go.
I clicked it. I must have double.
You are with us.
Double clicked it, my friend.
You're there.
All right. I'm glad to be back. This next poem is a very important poem. This poem is available on t-shirts. Please contact me. If you're interested in wearing one of these, my goal is to have one shirt in every state so that everybody in the United States can realize that they are powerful with what they can do. 4 words forward. Work, hope, love, vote. Work, hope, love, vote. If we could eradicate apathy dramatically, we could take back democracy emphatically. We could play a part in starting to reduce the tragedies. To vote is more than hope. It is strategy. Love could decrease the numbers of people left behind or hurt. It is not done magically, but by us doing the work. 4 words of quote to note. Work, hope, love, vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernardo. And maybe you want to put in chat the contact information, anyone who wants to get that shirt, and then people can copy it.
Okay, I will do that for you. And I'm also featuring Tuesday night, 9 p.m. EST. You can contact me about that as well.
Okay, so whatever you want to post in chat, people can have available to them. So good. Okay, thank you. All right, the next poet is Dan Kerr. And one of my favorite authors is Kurt Vonnegut. So if you've ever read Slaughterhouse-Five, and you remember the character of Billy Pilgrim, you know, someone goes back and forth in time, gets unstuck in time. And this is a poem, very much a poem of Northport, which is a very special place to many of us here. And it's autobiographical, and it's a comment somewhat on the 1960s as well, and on my youth, and about young people now turned old looking back. That's the background. And it's called Falling In with a Fast Crowd. Connie appeared one evening in my basement. A blonde, tall blonde woman, more beautiful than Haley Mills, but without the British accent. I never knew what she shared with my older brother beyond that pool game in my childhood home. The last time I saw Connie was at one of my brother's football games. However, I did not recognize the guys in her entourage. They seemed to be arguing over why they were there and where they were going after the game. When I asked my brother about Connie and why he no longer brought her to the house, he simply said, "She has fallen in with a fast crowd." Everyone old enough to remember recalls where they were on November 22nd, 1963, when those shots rang out in Dallas. A recent post on Facebook asked, did anyone that lived in Northport remember what happened late on the afternoon of March 27th, 1969? More than 200 people did. People who were young that day, but now have grown old. And they described the carnage of that day. The junior high school was the grassy knoll, and the library was the Daily Plaza. As the voices on Facebook provided the images for the Zagruda-like film of this terrible event. A girl of 12 that day described the sound of the explosion, her house shaking as she dialed 911, and her mother shielding her from the horror that lay outside her front door. The car had been traveling at 100 miles an hour when it hit the bus head on Laurel Avenue, just past Scudder. The sound of the impact emptied the junior high school and the library. Witnesses described the smell of beer and blood in the air, the engine of the car in the passenger section, and the lifeless bodies of 5 young people being pulled from the wreckage. Connie had cut school that day to spend the day partying with her fast crowd friends, and lost her life when reckless abandon collided with a bus, fateful afternoon. The Facebook posts of memories of young people now grown old caused me to search the internet for answers to questions that did not exist. I found a picture of Connie smiling in her high school yearbook, looking more like Haley Mills in my basement playing pool than that confused girl I saw arguing with her new friends at the football game. I found her tombstone in her family burial plot. She was buried next to her grandparents. She seemed more out of place there than that girl at the football game years ago. At the risk of opening an old wound, I asked my older brother what impact this tragedy had on him. He said, I learned I was not indestructible, and I learned it could have been me in that car. It's hard to make sense out of the death of a beautiful young woman, but the sad story reminds young and old alike of the dangers of falling in with a fast crowd. Thank you. Okay, Emily, over to you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Ella, for your wonderful poetry. I'm going to read one from a new chapbook that I have coming out in March. And I'd also like to dedicate it to Barbara Southard, even though she's not here. It's called Undone. The tulip tree falls in slow motion, convulsing earth and sky. A crash, a shudder, dizzying silence. Empty space where magnificence only just stood. A daughter, a husband, a sister, a lifelong friend. Each name has drawn its chapter to a close in that book of life we cling to with steadfast certainty. After so much meandering, no more leisurely walks through seasons, no more waiting to see stories resolve, no more hands to grab hold of, earth's tethers undone. Thank you.
Lisa. Okay, I've only got one other reader in chat. So I'm going to go to Shu, and then we'll go around and we'll do the round robin in case we missed anybody. And then Kathy also has a poem to read. But Shu, you're the last one on my list. Over to you.
Hi everyone, Happy New Year. So I have been here for a while, so nice to see everyone here. So this is my today's reading. The title is Solitary Night. Midwinter, cold, yet not freezing. Water in the pond, still alive. Early night, shadow, yet not black. Building in distance, windows aglow with a faint light. End of working day, completed, yet not done. Files saved in a draft folder, drafts to be refined. Sliding door, automatically open, yet not fully. Crisp air awakens sleepy limbs. I step into my solitary night. The world beyond, wakened, yet not devoid. Bare trees and stoic street lights stand still. No living presence in sight. Wandering by myself, lonely yet not absolutely solitude. Behind office doors, strangers persist in their projects. Parking lot, hushed yet not truly silent. Cars scattering in the field. Engines murmur somewhere. Settle into the car, isolated yet not entirely estranged. Lean back on the seat, losing myself in a world of my own. Thank you.
Shu, it's just been really wonderful to watch you evolve in your confidence and your poetry over the last several months. Really, I'm glad you're with us, and I'm glad you read every week, every month, and it's been great to be with you on this journey. You really have grown.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to just quick and go around robin and see if we missed anybody who wants to read before we have Kathy get the last word. I'm looking around, and it looks like all the faces have all had an opportunity to read. So Kathy, we're going to go over to you before we call back Ella for our encore.
Hey. Ella, you're amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming. I'd like to point out one thing. You know, when you look at the flyer, it says that I'm with Robert Savino and Ginger Williams. Robert Savino is my backup. If I can't make it, he's here to serve Dan, who's, you know, master of ceremonies here. Unbelievable contribution. And Ginger Williams, we honor her for what she has done for poetry, and a little out of commission, so we don't see her anymore, but fabulous poet, fabulous person. So we honor her by keeping her name on board. My poem is called Driving. Driving snow-dusted black ice on roads that bend in the distance, certain death this winter morning, the god of my youth threatening hell if we miss mass. Black powdered tree branches show off crystal daggers that melt, crash into bits. Sun shines through boughs, a canvas of jewels. We head to our stained glass church, talk with our God, earn blessings, earn heaven. Out the window, I look around, think we don't need to die to see him. That's it.
Well done, Kathy. Thank you. Okay, so Ella, we're going to bring you back now for an encore.
Thank you. So my last poem is, I've been reading for a while at various events because it's inspired by my friendship with a student in Ukraine that I tutored. Her name is Sophia, and this poem is written in her honor, and I promised her that I would read it at every poetry reading I went to until the war is finished. So I'm continuing with that today, and it's called Polyanitsia. Are you listening? Hear the way her mouth stretches to form Polyanitsia, drawing out every syllable so I might get it right. Each consonant a punch, punctuated by a memory of planes crowding the sky, geared to protect her home, to ensure sunflowers never wilt. Hearing the joyful phrase, "You would pass," as she tells me the story of young daughters who even themselves with the soldiers that keep guns drawn to their chests, whose eyes narrow at their request, because they do not possess a willingness to break bread. They confuse the bread for strawberries, thinking they can crush them under their heel and leave the ground splattered red without consequence. But the daughters simply laugh at their mistake, and in the face of ruination, their sagacity holds the city, voices carrying towards the smoky sky. Where does faith go once pushed underground? Does it rattle dimly in a subway station, the echo of 1,000 sirens, each sounding for your attention? The words you choose may be vessels of faith, but they can only stretch so far. Will you be a passive listener? Hear the way her mouth stretches to form Polyanitsia and not sit to practice it with her? Assemble the word with each tool she gives you. Let it ring from the rooftops and sing it in the streets. If you have been gifted these words, you must keep practicing the syllables in the mirror. Thank you. Just for a little bit of context, the word Polyanitsia, it means bread in the Ukrainian language, but Russians, because of their dialect, they pronounce it as Polyanitsia, the word for strawberries in Russian, and it's how they can discern Russian soldiers from their allies. Crazy story.
Over to you.
Okay, so next month we have Sherry Lynn. Anyone who knows her knows to not miss this reading. She's lovely, and her work is very artsy and detailed, and it's like a trip to poetry land. I hope you'll come. In the meantime, whoops, thank our beloved Ella, and I'm sure we'll be seeing her many times in the future. I'm going to mute myself because the phone is ringing. Thank you, Ella.